What's up, guys? This is Coach Grant with First Down Training, and today we're going to be breaking down some of Justin Fields' throwing mechanics. We're going to be talking about how you guys can get a stronger arm, how you guys can add distance and velocity to your throws, how you guys can throw on the run to the right side, and also how you can throw on the run to the left side, okay? So it's going to be working on mainly just mechanics, hip drive, torque, how you can produce as much energy as possible, be as efficient as possible as a quarterback, okay? So I hope this video gives you guys some value. Also, guys, if you want to get a stronger arm and you want a 4-week program that you guys can do to improve your arm strength, add about 10 yards to your deep ball, add more velocity on your throws over the middle, check out that link in the description. It says improve your arm strength. Full 4-week program with specific exercises to help your arm strength improve. Let's get started. So first things first here, we're going to be talking about just his overall mechanics, his overall just this stroke and how he throws the ball, right? So the big thing I want you guys to notice is how much he drives from his hips and how he has that great dissociation or that separation, as people like to call it, from their upper half and his lower half, okay? So you see when he goes back to make this throw, let's watch it again full speed one more time. Great drive on this throw. Very strong throw, like a lot of velocity coming off of his hands. So let's talk about why he's able to make this throw and just a lot of the key mechanical points of this throw. So you see when even before he even starts this throw, he's in a very relaxed position, right? Very relaxed with his elbows. He's not super tense. He's not holding the ball by his ear. That's a myth that everybody teaches you, that you need to hold this ball up by your ear, because that really does nothing for you but make your traps tense, and it makes your elbows tense. And if you have more, because if you guys have been watching this channel, you guys know this. If you guys are new to this channel, that all of your throwing all your power comes from your legs and it comes from your hips, right? It comes from the hips, how much you could drive, how much torque can you produce from your shoulders, dissociating your upper and your lower half, and then how much you could drive from your legs. That's where your power comes from. If you're tense with your upper half, that takes away the amount of force that you could produce from your lower half and with your hips, okay? So we want to make sure that I'm in a nice, relaxed position with this ball carriage, right? So now when I go back, the start of the throw starts with this back leg push. You see how he pushes off that back leg, and you can tell by his shin angle that he's pushing off the inside arch of his back leg because his leg's at almost like a 45. Now, when you guys push this way and you're driving towards the target, you're driving with that front leg at the target, you want to push back with your shoulders. They call that dissociation, right? So shoulders go back as those hips are going forward as you get that front foot down. Now, when you strike that ground, after you push from that back leg and you push off that inside arch, the most important thing on that foot strike is that you keep the ground force that you produced, right? So as you're pushing, you see how he's at his legs almost at this like 45 angle. That tells me that he's pushing off that inside arch. But when he strikes the ground, he keeps a slight bend to that front knee. And when you guys can keep a slight bend to that front knee, that keeps the ground force that you just produced from that back leg. So I push off that inside arch, I keep that ground force, my front foot gets down, I keep that slight bend, so now my hips can drive this thing through, right? Now, when we get into the upper half, so that's about the lower half. That's how you keep ground force and torque. Those are the two things that tie into it. So this is ground force, pushing off the inside arch, trying to keep your butt at the same level throughout the throw, and keeping a bend to that front knee. If you guys lock out with this leg and that leg shoots up here, you're probably throwing this thing more so with your shoulders rather than driving right around with your legs. Okay, so you want to make sure that we're pushing off the inside arch. Now, that push up the inside arch also helps with my back hip being able to come through, right? So you see when he takes the ball back, he has this kind of like L, some people call it the opposite L, right? Any kind of back, just call it a backstroke because it doesn't have to be a perfect L. You see how he tilts the nose of the ball up a little bit, and some guys like to have that wrist completely flat. It's everybody throws this thing different. Everybody's got different motions, but the thing that remains consistent is that when you have this backstroke and you strike the ground, that front shoulder is on the target. That front shoulder is quiet, as I like to call it. Now, when you are able to drive your hips through and keep your front shoulder quiet, that creates a lot of power, right? So you see how he's able to rotate through, and not only his back hip is coming through, his front hip is rotating through to where his hips are almost parallel to the target and his shoulders are almost parallel to the target. You see how he's able to rotate. Now, this position right here is exactly where we want to be. He's almost squeezing his back knee together. That means that he's pivoting off that, or I wouldn't call it a pivot. That's just kind of the terminology that resonates the best with me. But he's pushing and he's turning that push into a pivot. And he's pushing, then he pivots. And that drives that back hip through. When you get that back hip through before that football and keep your front hand tight to your face, that creates a lot of power, right? It's almost like that slingshot. Like you think of a bow and arrow, right? That bow stays on the target. You're pulling that arrow back. That's kind of like that football. You're pulling it back, and when you let it go, that's your hips coming through, and that's ripping the whole throw through, right? A lot of guys like to do when they push off this back leg is they don't like to turn this into rotational force. They don't like to rotate with that front hip and drive those hips through. So what happens is they'll push, but they'll let that back leg extend. They'll let that back leg trail behind. It's really important that you almost want to pretend like you got like a beach ball in between your knees, and you're trying to not let that beach ball fall when you rotate through. You want to rotate with your hips, but let that beach ball stay in between those knees so that back leg doesn't extend out, okay? So that's the most important thing about hip drive, being able to get your hips through before that football and rotating your front hip as well as just your back hip to be able to come through. Now, what gives me more power and what helps me be accurate is this front hand. So what a lot of people like to do is when they throw, you see how Fields keeps that hand somewhere by his face the whole time. that allows me not to dip my elbow and to swing my front shoulder out of there. And you see when he finishes on this throw, it's kind of hard to see. We'll see in other clips too, where his shoulders are level and his hips are level. You want to try to stay square. You don't want to take your front shoulder. A lot of people think that you want to take this front shoulder, his left shoulder, and you want to replace it with where your right shoulder was. Like you want to rotate all the way through to where your left shoulder is pointing behind you. You want to try to finish square to the target. Like how he's square to the camera angle right now, that's how you want to finish to your target, okay? So now, reason for that is if you open up that shoulder and you swing that shoulder around, your body's split down a midline, right? So if you swing that shoulder open, what's going to happen? Your arm's going to fly and you're going to come sidearm. If you're a quarterback and you tend to miss left to right, most likely because you're opening up that shoulder too soon, like you're spreading your chest and your front shoulder comes through and you let your arm fly. That's the terminology that I use. Now, another thing, so you want to try to stay level. That's why you want to stay level. Don't let that arm fly. Let your hips rotate you, not your shoulders. Now, another thing that people like to do is this is what results from a lockout sometimes with that front leg, is they like to swing their elbow down for power. They swing their elbow to their hips. Now, same thing. Your body here. You swing your elbow down, what do you think it's going to do to your release? You're going to push that release high, and you're almost going to come down like a pitcher. That's something I knew I struggled with because I was taught the wrong way. I was taught that you swing your left elbow for power. And yeah, it might work, but it's not consistent, right? Yeah, you might feel like you have a lot of power, but it's not consistent. If you're a quarterback and you have that problem and you try to fix it and you try to leave that hand by your face, it's going to feel like you have no power at all because you're not rotating with your hips. Your hips tie into everything, right? You keep that front hand by your face right here like this and you rotate with your hips, that's going to be torque. You don't rotate with your hips and you keep that front hand by your face, it's going to feel like you're throwing with half your body. So it's all about being able to trust my hips to rotate through, keeping that front hand by my face, and having that nice clean sequence, okay? It's all a process, but it's all connected. And as soon as you get one thing, the other thing starts getting a lot easier. As soon as you start getting the hips, the shoulders get a lot easier. It's all just going to build and build and build. Let's watch throw again one more time. Great mechanically sound throw here. Great job producing ground force and turning that ground force into rotational force. So now we're going to be looking at this throw on the run here. Just a quick little dump off, kind of uncomfortable throw, right? So when we're escaping out of the pocket, you see how he's getting chased right here, right? It's so important that on the run, we're going to look at this in the other clip too from a little bit better of an angle, that when you step with your throwing side foot, that's when you rotate your shoulders. So you see how Fields, he's stepping with his right leg and his right leg's in the ground and he's rotating with those shoulders. Now when he finishes through, especially on the run, it's very similar to the throw we were just talking about. Your hips staying level to the target and your shoulders staying level are very important because same thing. If you dip that elbow down, your release is going to get pushed high. If you swing that front shoulder open, your release is going to get pushed wide. So it's important that we keep that hand by my face. I try to stay square in my shoulders at release point. You see this release point right here where his hips are completely level, shoulders are level, hands by his face, and you see his arms at a nice clean spot. That's where we want to try to be anytime I'm on the run. Now, especially when I'm getting chased and especially when I'm in this escape situation, I got pressure. At release point is the only thing I need. I need you to be square at release point. After you release it, you could fall out of there as much as you want, right? So you see how he's here, he swings that left leg through in the direction of the throw because when you swing your front side, so your opposite of your throwing side foot. So let's say I'm a righty. I step at the target with my right leg. I close my shoulders. I swing the left leg through because that's almost like that slingshot. That's almost like that back leg drive. And when you keep that hand tight, you flick that wrist and you try to stay square with your upper half. That's a lot of torque. All you got to worry about now is flicking that wrist, and you see how he does a great job of that. Almost like you're shooting a free throw, but almost like you're throwing at a dartboard. You want to flick that wrist because you got so much momentum because you're on the run. If you could turn that momentum into torque by stepping with the right leg, closing your shoulders, swinging the left leg through, that's how you generate power. When you flick that wrist and you flick that wrist at the target, that's just your consistency. You turn all that power, all that momentum, all that force into a nice accurate ball. And then you see after he throws it, he kind of fades out of there, right? When he fades it, that's fine. I just need you to be square at release point. I need you to have a good release point. Emphasize that wrist flick. Trust your hands and trust that torque that you produce. That's a great job. Let's watch this again full speed. I know it comes up quick, but nice accurate shot here by Fields running full speed. So now this is just a hell of a play right here. Gives this little jab, and on the run, again, you see how square he's able to stay, especially to your left side. So throwing to your weak side, if you're a lefty, it would be your right side. Throwing to your weak side is very, very, very difficult. In this situation, right? I actually like it when it's a basic sprint out personally because I always felt like I could get more rotation on it with my shoulders throwing to the left side. I know a lot of guys that I train who are righties think the same way, but this is very tough because it's an escape drill. So now when we got a blitzing guy coming off the edge here, right? And he's coming right to my blind spot unblocked. Do you see how he gives him this little jab with his left foot? He's here. jab with the left foot, and he goes out, right? That little quick jab and that little head fake, right, you see that Fields does, that's something that you guys can all learn from. Anytime you guys work a situation where you got to escape and reverse pivot out of there, working that quick little jab is what's going to get this guy coming off the edge because he's unblocked, right? Think of it like if you're a dual threat guy or anybody, and you're running on a straight down the sideline, and you got a safety coming here, and you know he's taking that angle too hard, he's running too fast. What are you going to do? You're just going to cut back, right? Because his momentum's so fast, he's not going to be able to turn that quick. Same thing with a blitzing guy off the edge. He sees us sitting there being a sit and duck in the pocket. He's coming full speed trying to take my head off. I give him this quick jab like Fields does, right? You see how he's here? Jab. And then he reverse pivots out. He uses that jab with his left foot to push him out of there, right? And then you might say, oh, it's just him being an athlete. This is a throw that guys work on. And it's just, you're going to critique it. You're going to say, oh, he doesn't think that. That's a throw that guys work on. It's just something that you have to be able to do to play quarterback position. You use that quick little jab. These are all throws that he's practiced before. You don't think he's just out there playing backyard football. That's not the case. He's worked these situations. He's worked these type of throws, and that's why he's such an elite passer, and that's why all these guys are elite passer. Watch some Josh Allen film. Does a lot of the same thing, right? Against, I forget who it was, but there was one where he played front side, right? Where this linebacker comes off the edge. He gives a quick little jab with his left foot, and he escapes out the opposite way. This is something that you teach, especially as a quarterback coach. You teach this kind of movement. A quarterback has to be able to execute this movement. So now when he gets out of the pocket, what's the first thing that shoots around? Eyes, right? So when I shoot my eyes downfield, it's important that when let's talk about on-the-run mechanics, especially when we're going to the left side. Everybody loves to bail out of there with their front shoulder. Everybody loves to step in the direction. Everybody loves to close those shoulders. But what happens is that they'll be here, they'll be at this position, and their left shoulder flings out towards the sideline. And again, we're on a midline, so what happens? Your arm gets disconnected from your frame. You step at the target on the left, but your left shoulder, in this case, was swinging out towards the sideline. You let your arm fly, and then you come across your body. You want to make sure that I'm stepping, closing those shoulders, and you stay square. You see how Fields, when he swings his left leg through, it's almost like he's got something on the tip of his shoe and he's trying to kick it at the target. And if you try to kick something with your opposite foot at the target, that brings your hips through. And when you bring your hips through and you bring your shoulders through and you stay square to the target at the release, you see how he doesn't even turn out of there after the release point. That makes me have a consistent release point. You see where his release point is? Right at that 90-degree angle, right? So now it's all about just trusting my hands. I got that torque because I have momentum out of the pocket. I stepped with my throwing side leg and I closed my shoulder. I swung the left leg through like I'm trying to kick something at the target, and I trusted those hands. That's what you got to do, especially when we're throwing an escape situation where I got to escape out of the pocket and make this throw back across the field. Let's watch this thing again, full speed one more time. So Fields drops, gets out of the pocket, step as we close. Let's stay square and throw this dime down the field. It's a great shot there by Justin Fields. All right, guys, I really want to thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. If you guys have any questions at all, please leave those in the comments. I'll get back to you as soon as possible. And also, guys, if you want to improve your arm strength, you want to get a stronger arm, 4-week program to do that, check out that link in the description. It says improve your arm strength. I'll see you guys next time.